Okay, yeah. So typically when students visit campus, they do their campus tour, they get an admission presentation if it's on a Monday or a Friday, and this is the presentation that we give them. But again, my name is Kylie. I'm an admission counselor, so the person who guides your students out through the whole admission process. So starting even now, moving forward when they apply and going through all the steps of the admission process. So financial aid, scholarships, housing, and also just helping them find their college fit. What I like about NDSU is that we're very transparent about not being the right fit for everyone. Um, and that's why this presentation is also pretty helpful because you do learn some things about NDSU, but we also like our students to think a little bit more introspectively and critically about the kind of college experience they want. So with that, we can get started. I really hate my headshot, but I have to put it up there, so don't look at it. But I have a bachelor's in psychology, a minor in women's studies, and I'm almost finished getting my master's in higher education with my thesis as the last thing to finish. So finishing that up in December. And I'm from a small town in Maryland. And the question I get most often is, why are you here? How did you end up in North Dakota? And I wish I could say that it was a very exciting story, but it's not. NDSU offered me the job. And when I started looking into the university, I really liked all of the opportunities available to students. I went to a small, rinky-dinky little college on the East Coast, and every day I wish I went to a public in-state school instead of a private out-of-state school, because I would have saved myself half the money and had 4 times more resources, which is another thing I like to talk about when I meet with students and families, is just being wary of private colleges and really thinking, having your student think more about the cost of attendance after their scholarships are being given to them. Typically, private institutions will give you a big scholarship that will kind of razzle dazzle you, and it pays for half the cost of attendance, but then you're not really thinking about what the other half still is, especially in my case. And so I was still paying around $20,000 per year, and that's what NDSU is before you calculate any sort of financial aid and scholarships. But today we'll just kind of go over some fast facts about NDSU. We'll talk about how to apply the admission guidelines, housing. We'll talk about scholarships, financial aid, and just the NDSU experience overall, and then some other questions that you should be asking your students when they are thinking about college to get them, again, thinking more introspectively and thinking more critically about this decision, because it is huge. So with that, we can get started. We've got a little over 100 different majors, 87 different minors. We have about 12,000 or 13,000 students. So that puts us at about a mid-sized university. You can remain as anonymous as you want to, or you can find little communities within NDSU through one or more of our 250 plus student clubs and organizations. When you break those down, it's about a little over 100 different academic clubs. We have 20 multicultural organizations, 31 club sports teams, 14 Division I teams, 10 fraternities, 4 sororities, and with all of that together, you have about a little over 100 different special interest clubs. So clubs that are centered around wellness and being active, clubs that are centered around service and volunteering, honorary societies, student government, and then you have, a lot of niche interest clubs like Anime Club and Gaming Guild, and we have a huge esports gaming league and Hacky Sack Club, and we literally have a club that's called Go Outside Club, where it's just getting you outside and meeting new people. But with all of those organizations, all of those students, that puts us at about a 16-to-1 student faculty ratio. So your class sizes are going to be anywhere from 40 students or less. Those gen ed and intro level courses, they are going to be anywhere from 100 to 200 students, just because everybody has to take those courses. But when you get into those higher level major specific courses, your class sizes are typically going to be about 40 students or less. And if you're doing any sort of lab work, it's usually about 25 students or less. And we like to talk about those numbers because at NDSU, it's all about you. We will work to provide you with the right environment to help your students succeed. And some of that includes our student support services. So we have access to the counseling center where if you want to pet our therapy dogs and talk about your feelings, that they're very sweet. It's access to disability accommodation services, military and vet services. The big thing is our career and advising center. They do a lot for our students. So they'll help you build a resume, craft a cover letter, run through mock interviews with you. They'll help you find practicums, internships, volunteer opportunities, and they host several different career fairs each year, which We have, 200 plus companies and businesses will come to the Fargo Dome, and they're looking to recruit NDSU students for internships and part-time jobs and give them a chance to network because they know that we prepare our students really well. Which brings me to my next slide is our career preparation. So we do a career outcome survey every single year. After seniors graduate, about 6 months later, we ask them, where are you now? Are you employed in the career field that you majored in? Are you continuing education? And for those students who have replied to us, we have about a 92% success rate overall. So 73% of them are employed, 19% are continuing education, and we have a median salary of about $50,000. And so these numbers, again, we're not just going to throw your students to the wolves. We will help prepare them for life after college. That transition can seem really overwhelming and scary for both the student and the parents. And you can even check out our career outcomes for each college. So for the College of Engineering, College of Business, health professions, that sort of thing, you can look at the top programs and see what their own success rate is. But overall, we do have a 92% success rate. And like I said, that transition to college can be really easy or really hard depending on where you are. And the Fargo-Moorhead area makes it a little bit easier for students. So they find part-time jobs downtown, they find internships, especially for engineering or business students, they can find paid internships. And it's just a really fun place to be in as a young adult. But when you're thinking about what school that you want your student to attend or your student wants to attend, it's really important to know the surrounding area that your school's in, because you're not just living at NDSU or the school, you're living in that community. And so what is there to do outside of school? Do you generally like the area? Do you generally like the people that are here? Again, it's just some of those questions that you should be asking your student, and really take the time to not only look at the college, but the surrounding community as well. But with that, are there any questions about NDSU, like brief overview, or the Fargo-Moorhead area? Okay. So I typically ask questions during presentations, make people raise their hands, because usually if studies have done, if you make people raise their hand like 3 times, they tend to like you a little bit better. But with that, I'll move on. So we can talk about the admission process and how to apply. So these are guidelines, they're not requirements. So the 2.75 GPA, if a student doesn't meet that requirement, it's not an automatic rejection. We just take a little bit more of a closer look at their transcript, especially their core classes, those maths, Englishes, and sciences. And the 14 core classes is typically what students need to graduate with anyway. So it's usually not an issue. It might be an issue for students who are homeschooled, and then that process is a little bit more, you just, again, take a little bit closer look at what their coursework looks like. The ACT and SAT score are not required for admission, but we can use it for scholarship purposes, which we are officially test optional right now. And then we never have an essay, and we never have an application fee. Although I will say, if your students are considering our friends to the north at UND, they have a $35 application fee. So you should maybe save some money and not apply there, because the economy right now is pretty crazy. But again, it just depends on the college fit and feel. But when your student applies, they'll know their admission decision between a few days to a week or 2, depending on how many applications we get in at once. But they'll be assigned an admission counselor, so someone like me who helps guide them through this process. And like I said, I oversee the majority of North Dakota, some pockets of Eastern, and then Central and Western North Dakota. And so we send out emails of applications being open, deadlines coming up. The big thing we do is send text messages to students. So we'll send out a text message, hey, this is Kylie, your admission counselor from NDSU. If you have any questions, let me know. We'll remind them that the housing application is open or scholarship deadlines are coming up. And they can seem a little robotic because we do have to send out the same message to 800 plus students. But if they reply to that text message, it's their counselor replying back to them. Most people think we are a robot, so they ignore us, which is valid. It can seem a little bit spammy. So when they come to campus and they meet us, and they're like, oh, you're a real person. I'm like, yeah, I'm the one who's been bothering you to do all the things. So that's pretty much what admission counselors are for. And even for parents, they can contact us at any time for anything as well. But any questions on the admission process and applying? Okay, and so then we'll talk about the different steps of the admission process. So we can start with housing, and typically at this point, students have done their tour already. So I ask them, which residence hall style do they prefer? Most of them never really answer because they're shy, but then, I push them. They begrudgingly say that they really like the high rises or the suite style rooms. We have two different types on campus. We have the low rise traditional style where it's you and a roommate in one room, and then you share a hall and a community bathroom with everyone else. But then you have the high rises, which are you and a roommate with one room, you have a bathroom connecting you to another room, and those are your seatmates. And so most students typically want to be in the high rises because they are newer, they're a little bit nicer, and they only have to share a bathroom with, three or four other people. But what's important about the housing application for us is that when you submit it, it's kind of like you are reserving a place in line. You're basically saying, I'm considering NDSU, so hold me a spot for a room. So when you submit that, it's a $100 deposit that's completely refundable up until May 1st. And then you get what we call a priority number. It's basically like a confirmation number where it gives you a specific day and time when you can get into the portal. And you can choose your hall and your room the same way you choose a seat in a movie theater or a seat in an airplane. So the sooner you do the housing application, the lower your priority number, the sooner you can get into the portal and the more availability you'll have to choose from, if that makes sense. And so we have had our go-getters who applied for admission as soon as it opened. And they told us that they literally stayed up until midnight to submit that housing application as soon as it opened because they wanted to be priority number one. And that's typically because they wanted to get into Cater or Pavic, which is our most popular high rises. So if students have a very strong preference for who they live with and where they live, it's always important to submit the housing application as soon as it opens. That will just increase the chances of them being able to choose exactly what they want when they get to live on campus. And then the other side of it is our roommate matching process, which typically our tours will sometimes go over it a little bit more, but I get excited when they forget because I get to say that our roommate matching process is kind of like a dating site for roommates. We have this platform called My College Roomie, and you fill out a personality questionnaire, a lifestyle inventory. Are you a neat or messy person? Are you a night owl, a morning bird? And it gives you compatibility scores of all these other students who are similar to you. So maybe I fill it out and I'm 92% compatible with an Emily. Then I can choose to contact with her on the platform. We can trade socials at that point, and however we want to go about it, and we can decide if we want to be good roommates or not. You can also potentially find it's this way as well, but there's no guarantee that any one of you will be able to get into a high rise and have 4 open spots. Sometimes you have two roommates who don't care about finding mates and they will plop themselves down in a room. And so instead of having 4 open spots in a suite, you have only 2 open spots. But that's pretty much living on campus in general. And then we also have the meal plan, which I can go over in the next few slides. But any questions on res life?
So Kylie, what I hear is that if we have a student that's interested in attending NDSU, we should apply right away because
Yes.
the deposit is refundable.
Yep. It's always better to do these things, and some of the other deadlines I'll talk about too, they are pretty much cut off. We want students to have all of these admission steps hopefully done by February to March, just so that they have from February to May, which is commitment season, to kind of really think about all the things that they've done. So hopefully before then they've done all their visits, they've done all their research, they've applied to other schools, and we always encourage them to tour as many schools as they want or as they need to, because you never want to have a student commit and then kind of think about what if when they're here, which we do have a lot of students who do that with other schools where they had never visited NDSU and they call us. We had this a few times actually this year, like the second or third week, and just say, I made a mistake. I should have gone to NDSU. And I'm sure there are sometimes students who feel that way about us. Because again, it's all about college fit and feel, and we're not the right fit for everyone, and that's totally okay. But yeah, getting started is always important. I would say the best timeline for getting started is probably spring of your junior year or fall, to start looking at schools, touring them with NDSU, and I'm sure the other schools are similar, but we have academic appointments where you can meet with actual, professors and academic advisors from any major, and they'll kind of go over like the type of courses you can expect. You'll get to see some of the resources and facilities that you'll be using. And for students who are really undecided about a major, we do have days where they can come and meet with academic advisors who are, trained to work with students who are underclassed, who will help them, find their fit based on their passions, based on the things that they like to do. So there's a lot of options, and I'd say the best timeline for getting started in this process is, again, fall or spring of their junior year.
So Kylie, question on housing. For freshmen, is it mandatory? I know some places are.
It is for first year.
Okay.
There are some exemptions where a lot of students who are, living in Fargo already with their families, a 30-mile radius is typically what it is. But yeah, most students are required to live on campus. And we've actually done several studies where students who live on campus versus students who don't. And for freshmen especially, for freshmen who lived on campus, they tend to do better socially, obviously, but academically as well. And their GPAs are 0.5 of a difference than students who don't live on campus. And that's pretty significant.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it really it gets you out of your room. And when students who decide to live off campus or stay with their families, we just tell them, make sure that you work a little bit harder to get involved, because you're not always on campus. So you have to find, those clubs and those organizations and finding your people basically, and those things. So yeah, that's why we have that first year requirement basically.
Yeah. Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions on housing, res life? All right, and so then we can talk about the biggest factor for most students, which is, what is it going to cost for me to go to NDSU? And so what we're looking at here for North Dakota residents, your tuition is about $10,000, your housing and your meal plan, those numbers. So housing is around, I want to say, $4,400, and meal plan is around $4,200 per year. And those numbers for housing and meal plan, they're actually an average between the high rise and the low rise. The high rises are a little bit more expensive because you do have a housekeeper who comes in and cleans your suite style bathroom every once in a while, which is actually really nice. When I lived in the suite, I had to, my suite mates were disgusting and I bit the bullet on that one. So that's why it is a little bit more expensive, and there's a little bit more of an upkeep for that maintenance wise. The meal plan is also an average between the 5-day and the 7-day meal plan. We really only recommend a 5-day meal plan if your student plans on going home every single weekend. So I have a lot of students who have family farms, and so they go home on the weekends to work on the family farm, and it doesn't really make sense for them to have the 7-day plan. But if a student has a 5-day meal plan, and then, well, let me back up. So when you actually do the math and you calculate what it is to get an NDSU per day, it's $17 per day. So if a student isn't eating here on the weekends, $17 is basically a dinner at this point. But it's really up to them to decide what works best for them. And then when they're an upperclassman, they can choose a different kind of meal plan, which is like a block plan. So you allocate a certain amount of swipes per semester. And so pretty much just have to keep track of how many lunches you want to have on campus, or however you want to go about it. And then you're looking at a total of about $20,000 per year. And that's, again, before we calculate any sort of financial aid and scholarships too. But I do like to talk about this and fees portion under tuition. We call that student fees. And if you ever visit campus or you look up, our cost sheet that has a little bit more of an in-depth breakdown of this, it will say student fees. And so basically, that's like a student support service fee, a student activity fee. So it covers all of the counseling services, the parent advising center, disability accommodation services. It covers those things, but it also covers the fun stuff too. So for us, it's free admission to, Bison athletic games. It's free admission to theater and music performances. We do campus programming every single week, like create your own terrariums, craft nights, movie nights at the pool, floating nights at the pool. And then it covers the cost of all of our student clubs and organizations. And typically I will ask students, what are some of the things they like to do for fun? And I try and kind of pair them with a possible student club or organization that they might be interested in. Or they'll ask me, I have this specific hobby of like clay target shooting? Do you have a club for that? We do. And so I usually will send them more information about that, because it's really important for students to be able to visualize being on campus when they visit and putting themselves in the shoes of an actual NDSU student. And the same goes for any college, really. But that's my long-winded way of saying it's all covered in student fees. And we call it a use it or lose it service. You're already paying for these things, so you might as well use them. But any costs or questions on cost? And so then, like I said, it will, like I said, the smaller schools can razzle dazzle you with those bigger scholarships, and maybe financially it does make sense for you to go there, but maybe it doesn't. And we do have a nice little handy worksheet that we call our budget calculating worksheet. And so basically it's like an Excel sheet, but it's a PDF. And so you can enter in the values that you know of your scholarships you've been awarded, of your FAFSA information, and it does the calculations for you. So you can kind of, estimate how much it is for you to go to NDSU. And then what's nice is that it gives you columns for school 2 and 3. So you can also compare them side by side, which is something I wish my parents did for me too. I never went through the whole admission process. I pretty much, visited one school and that was it. I was like, I fell in love with it and I would have chosen that experience again, but I definitely would have been more mindful of scholarships being awarded and getting started with work study jobs sooner and things like that. So again, just be sure to sit down with your students and help them really understand what that means, because I didn't have that and I wish I did. But any questions on cost? All right, so we'll talk about one of the different ways for financial aid. Are we familiar with a FAFSA? For the most part, yeah. So the free application for federal student aid, it's based on your family's income for the prior year. So this past year, your FAFSA was for the year of 2020, based on those taxes, and determines how much aid you get in terms of federal loans, grants, and work study. The thing about work study is what's nice at NDSU, it doesn't really matter if you qualify for work study or not. We have over 1,000 jobs on campus. We always need student workers. For those students who do qualify, their checks come directly from the government and they get first pick of campus jobs. And those who don't qualify, their checks come from NDSU and they don't get first pick. But that's the only difference. It's the same pay rate and same time frame they're getting paid. And it also depends on how picky your student is about choosing a campus job. So some students really don't want to work at the dining center. And I get it. I work food service and it sucks, but it's also a job and it pays the most on campus. So it really just depends on what your student wants to do. And that application started opening up October 1st. It's typically the same every year. And then we have what we call a priority deadline of February 1st. We'll talk about why that's important soon, which is pretty close to other schools as well. But any questions on the FAFSA? Or maybe I should say, when it is your time to fill that out, are you planning on filing it? Is the better question to ask parents. I should be saying yes. Yes, we should all be filling it out. It's not required, but it's recommended because we do have certain scholarships, which I'll go over, where if there's no FAFSA on file, your student will be excluded from those applicant pools, regardless of what your FAFSA says. So some families are like, we make too much money for us to be considered from, more than just the regular unsubsidized loan that's given to you. And that's totally your choice. But again, you will be excluding your student from those applicant pools, where sometimes we have two students who are, they're equivalent in the same sort of process. So maybe the scholarship is major specific and these two students are really close together by GPA and the major that they're looking for. And then sometimes they look at whether or not a student has a FAFSA on file, regardless of what it says. And that sometimes can be the deciding decision. But again, it's not required, it's just recommended. And it really only takes about 15 to 20 minutes. I did it for grad school this past year and it took me 15 minutes because now we have the IRS data retrieval tool, which takes all of your information if you filed your taxes electronically. But any questions on FAFSA? All right, so then we can talk about scholarships. So for us, we have this scholarship model, which is one type of scholarship. So for your students, there's a few different scenarios that could happen. You could have a student who has a 3.65, but maybe they got a 30 on the ACT. You would give them that higher scholarship of $2,000 per year for $8,000 total because it's renewable. Or let's say that your student had a 3.85 GPA, but they got less than a 24 on the ACT. You would still give them that higher scholarship for the $8,000. Or another scenario, maybe they're sitting at the the cusp of getting into another bracket. So they're sitting at a 3.64, a 3.84, 3.98, and they apply, follow their senior year. They're given the scholarship. They're awarded that scholarship for the respective categories. And then they finish out that fall semester really strongly, and it bumps them up into the next category. If they send us their transcript with the upgraded GPA, we will upgrade their scholarship to, if it's sent before February 1st, which is that very important deadline that I mentioned. And then we also have another scenario where your student is awarded a scholarship and maybe they do a bit of a senior slide. It's totally okay. We will honor their scholarship as long as it's not more than 3/10 of a point. So they do have a little bit of a safety net, some wiggle room, because we know that senior year can get really stressful with all the things they're trying to complete from high school and then trying to get ready for this huge transition. But again, this is only one type of scholarship and it's awarded based on admission. Then we have named scholarships, which like a lot of other schools where we have one general application where you fill out once, takes 15 minutes of your time, and it automatically applies you to the hundreds of scholarships that NDSU has based on their eligibility. So some of them are merit-based based on GPA or ACT score. Some of them are financial need-based based on that FAFSA information. Some are major-specific like Dusen and Bobcat. They only give to ag, engineering, math, and science students. Mildred Larson only gives to business students. And then we have a lot of very small, weirdly specific scholarships, like scholarships for students graduating from high school or a county, because we have individual donors and businesses and companies who given us X amount of money and they get to decide whatever criteria they want to give, scholarships to. And some of the weirdly specific ones, our best example is a woman named Celeste Brower. She's given us money to give to students, and the only criteria is that they share her same last name. And that's it. That's the whole scholarship. So we have a lot of, smaller scholarships and a lot of different ways to earn money to pay for school. And each year that your student is here, they can apply for more scholarships as well. And some companies and businesses prefer to give to upperclassmen only just because freshmen are notorious for switching majors, transferring to schools, and for them, it's kind of like an investment. So, we help you go to school, so we hope that you promote and support us in the future. But the thing about the scholarship application is that we're asking for it to be done by February 1st. We call that a priority deadline. So the hope is that your student will have done the FAFSA before then, the scholarship application before then. So in March, we can send you a financial aid package in the mail, which will include your FAFSA information, your scholarship information, and then give you that final estimated cost of what it is to go to NDSU. Other schools will send you something similar at the same time. And then hopefully at that point, you've done all your visits, you've done all your research, and now you know the cost. You can compare apples to apples and make that best decision for yourself. Now, the FAFSA you could technically do at any point in time. You would have aid dispersed to you whenever it's processed if you choose to use it. But the scholarship application for us, it is a hard deadline. So we tell students that if they miss that, they're kind of SOL on those big scholarships. We send them reminders about doing it. It's in their admitted student checklist. So have your students do all of these steps sooner rather than later, because spring semester for them will feel like it's coming in hot. Time will pass by really quickly for them, and it's going to be very overwhelming. So if they do everything in the fall, it'll make their lives much easier. And it'll make their decision too a lot easier. But any questions on scholarships? Yeah.
Kylie, I have a question, kind of selfish in nature, but about funding period, because I am considering going back to class for a different major. So do you have anything for old farts that are making a shift? Or is it mostly just for the kids?
It's, mostly first year and transfer students. There are pretty much the funding that you get is through FAFSA if you get anything at that point. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
And you say February 1st, are you now talking your junior year again, or is that the senior year?
Sorry, yes, that is their senior year, spring of their senior year.
All right, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yep. And then any other questions on cost or financial aid, scholarships? Okay, and then we can kind of just talk about the NDSU experience, which, part of that is getting involved in those student clubs and organizations. like I said, when I meet with students one-on-one, I always ask them what are some of the things that they like to do for fun. And sometimes they don't even know how to answer that because they've never been asked these questions. They've never really taken time to think introspectively. But getting involved is really important, again, for their social and academic careers. But part of the other experiences that they can have is orientation week, which is in June. So if they do decide to come to NDSU, they get to come back to campus, meet some of their classmates. A lot of roommates will coordinate what orientation days that they're going to so they can meet up. They get to meet with academic advisors, their professors, register for classes at that point. And then the huge thing is welcome week for our first year students. So this past year, we had students move in on Saturday, August 20th, and classes started on Tuesday, August 23rd. So from that time when they moved in, for the rest of the week is called Welcome Week. And it's essentially like a summer camp. We have designed this week to keep them as busy as possible so that they're not thinking about how much they miss home, how overwhelming this is, but helping them get out of their room and meeting new people because the first few weeks are critical for that. And it's, the retention rate really is dependent on how well they do those first few weeks and how they feel that they fit and they belong at that point. And then another part of that is the study abroad program, which we do get asked about a lot. So we send students to over 70 different destinations. We have sent students to Belgium, Italy, France, London. My coworker got to go to Dubai and India while she was at NDSU, which is pretty cool. And you're just never going to be able to go abroadly as cheaply as you could through school, which is something that I wish I utilized as a student. But it's also a really good learning experience. We do have, students can go for a week and a half to 2 weeks. They can go for a month, a semester, 6 months, a year long. Just depends on the program and if they can make it work with their schedule. But this past May, we had students for our agriculture students got to go to Ireland and study the equine industry. We have students going to Germany this winter break, which is typically the most popular choices that students will have. So they'll go like winter break, a spring break, a summer break, where they're there for only a few weeks, but they do get those really valuable experiences. And then overall, I typically will ask students more introspective questions at the end of our appointment if you do meet with me one-on-one. And so really ask your students these kinds of questions of like, what do they want out of a college experience? For some students, it's they really want to focus on the career or just getting that degree. Some of them just want to meet all the new people and be involved in all the new things. And most students want a good balance between both of them. And sometimes if students don't know what they want, they know what they don't want out of a college experience, which is just being maybe in a small university where there's not a lot of opportunities, or being in a really small town where, again, there's not a lot to offer outside of the university. And then have them, think about if they could picture a perfect college, what are some of the things that they must have? And that's, size, its location, it's the quality of the program, it's the type of opportunities available outside of their major and getting involved. And just have them, my best advice is when I have students visit campus, I say, as you're leaving this visit today, you're processing this visit, you're thinking about going on other visits too. When you're there, think about how visiting each campus made you feel, because when you walk on a campus, sometimes it feels like home, and there's really no other way to describe it, but you know it when you know it. And sometimes you walk on a campus and it just doesn't feel right. And that's okay if it's NDSU. We just want them to have all of the resources available. So I just ask them to be a little bit more mindful when thinking about this and thinking about, picturing themselves as an NDSU student or at another school and picturing themselves going to the dining center, going to any athletic games, going to, hanging out in the little study nooks that are all over campus, things like that. And sometimes students will surprise you and they have spent actually a lot of time thinking about this. And sometimes they have no idea, and that's totally okay too. And that's why I ask those questions to kind of, get them thinking about things that maybe they haven't thought about before. And if they have, then that's going to make their decision a lot easier. But again, it's just these are the kinds of questions that you should be asking your student, regardless of the school that they're considering, because they do need to be able to think about this themselves and they have to make that final choice. But after that, We can recap just the timeline for NDSU specifically, which is pretty similar to other schools. And so applying for admission early fall, completing that housing contract, which opened up this past October, or sorry, this October 3rd. And then we had the scholarship application with the priority deadline of February 1st, with also the FAFSA with that priority deadline. And then we have commitment season running from February to May. And commitment season, every school that your student has ever applied to, we're all going to be asking the same thing over and over again. Are you ready to commit? Do you need any more information before deciding? Are you still considering us? And if at any point your student doesn't want to go to NDSU or another school, have them tell the person that they've been working with that they don't want to go to that school, just because it'll save us some time from sending them, reaching back out to them over and over again. We'll stop clogging their inboxes. But, some students are afraid to tell us that they don't want to go to NDSU. And again, that's totally okay. We're very transparent about not being the right fit, and we just want them to find the right fit. So again, they have that time from February to May to decide, really, hopefully by that point, again, that they've done all their visits and research. And some students know well before February that they want to go to NDSU, and some students don't even know until well after May 1st. But asking these questions and going on these tours and visiting other schools, and even helping them job shadow if they're kind of considering a few different majors maybe, or visiting with, doing these academic appointments, which NDSU does offer virtually, so you can meet with someone over Zoom and they can help you, get a nice overview of the program and what to expect. But again, hopefully they've done all of that around the time commitment season rolls around, and then they have, a few months to really think about everything and process all of, the questions they've been asked, everything they've been learned, and then hopefully make that decision by May 1st. But yeah, any questions? No questions at all? Are we all really excited about NDSU? Are you ready for your students to commit and be a Bison?
Some of us have a few years before they'll be a Bison.
I'm ready for Nikki to be a Bison.
Yep.
Well, and my daughter's a junior, so, but I think my son wants to go to NDSU, so we're just a few years away, but time to be thinking.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Kylie, I just added to the chat the survey form that you were hoping that you could get more people to fill out.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want NDSU to have your information, if you want to see updates about the type of weekend biz events that we do, because we do have, each college will do a weekend event where students who are all interested in engineering or health professions, business, they'll come to college, they'll get to meet with professors, academic advisors, get to tour all of the resources and facilities, and they get to meet other students who are interested in the same things too. But yeah, if you want to fill that out, you definitely can. If you don't want any information and you don't want us to bother you, then don't fill it out, but it's up to you.
Thank you, Kylie. It was really interesting. It was nice to hear about dates, deadlines, and kind of thinking ahead. I only have a freshman, but it's nice to be able to have an idea of what's coming, and it's time to let him experience what he's thinking about he wants to do.
Yeah, definitely. And it's never really too early to start just doing these processes either. Obviously the deadlines and the nitty-gritty details of the admission process aren't really relevant to them at that point, but having the experience of visiting and getting those questions answered and just seeing what it's like to be a college student somewhere is going to be really helpful for them later on.
And I didn't realize that now they actually have somebody in your role that is telling them, hey, you need to do this, or hey, these are the activities that you like, and this is what's available.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and of course, every admission counselor does things different. Every school does things different, but I personally like to try and connect with students on the most personal level that I can. And so in presentations, I'll ask them, this is your time to let me know if you want me to send you any extra information about, students, again, like to ask about clubs, our studying abroad, work study options. And then, if students don't really want to know more information, I just tell them that I'm going to send them stuff that they didn't ask for anyway. Usually it's, clubs and organizations that are related to their academic interests. So for like engineering, we have 15 different engineering clubs and 30 different ag related clubs. And so I'll send them things like that regardless, just because it's I think it's cool for them to be able to see what is out there and what's available to them. Okay. Any lasting questions?
Thank you. Just a recommendation. Figure out something for old farts.
Yeah,
There
honestly.
must be people who are changing jobs or enhancing the skills they have or something like that. I didn't know if you'd had alumni that maybe did something similar and said, hey, you should earmark this for people that are making a change. I've been home with my kids. I have a 4-year, a 2-year, and a certificate,
Okay, yeah.
but I might want to make a change. And so we've just started talking about that. But then it comes to, I've got 3 kids I got to put through college, and we've got all the regular bills and all that. So it would be nice to have an option for
Yeah,
an
definitely.
older crowd.
I mean, we do have, if you're interested in getting another degree, but we do have you can audit certain classes. You can be a non-degree seeking student where you just take the class for fun, or you can take classes towards a degree at your own pace too. So if one class, a semester is all you really want to do at this point, you could totally do that too. And again, you won't need to be paying, room and board or student fees necessarily. You're just kind of paying those by credit hours, basically.
Okay. Well, that's helpful too. Because it's not like I'm coming from an employer who says I'll help cover your expenses.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Kylie, so much for your time today. It's been really interesting. I'm hoping you don't mind if we post this up on YouTube to send more people your way.
Oh, yep, that's totally fine.
Thanks, Kylie.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.